Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Build Better Homes podcast. I'm your host, Royal Mortier with PLIRIS. And today I have a very awesome guest, Brent Wadas. And I want to start this off with a saying that I heard the other day. And as we were seeing these advancements in AI, the use of chat GPT and other mechanisms, the comments have been, especially in our world in the design realm, of is AI going to replace us? And the comment that I've heard is AI won't replace you. Somebody who knows how to use AI better is going to replace you. So in that aspect of it, I want to bring in somebody that has taken a system, that taken the use of robots in home construction. And, we don't necessarily want to replace the construction laborer, but when we have advancements of like this nature, we want to take advantage of those because we're an ever-growing population. And so being able to use those advancements is only going to make things better for everyone around us. So today, Brent Wadas with BotBuilt. They're a company that actually uses robots to pre-manufacture homes and ships everything out. And I'm going to let him explain more about this and his background. Brent, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me today, Roy. Appreciate it very much. Yeah, you kind of nailed it there. We're building a better power tool, basically, with AI. It's kind of an interesting way to look at the world. So a little bit on our company, basically, we're BotBuilt. We build framing components, basically, but we do it with a robotic system and a software system, which is a little unique. So we have a software system we've built up that can take a two-dimensional plan, turns it into a three-dimensional model, gives you the exact takeoff for all the lumber and framing, like nails and sheathing. And then that sends to a different system we've built, which tells our robots how to build each panel, mark them and label them. And then we just ship them on a little hotshot truck over to the job site. So you can do your framing in a couple of hours rather than a couple of days or weeks, depending on the size of the force that you have. And it makes the framer's job much easier on the job site and also safer because we're enabling basically new technological advancements using computer vision, AI systems, and really old-fashioned robots with really advanced tooling systems that we custom build. We're buying our robots off eBay, and I mean that literally. Go look up industrial robots on eBay today, kids. You're going to find yourself a little toy for Christmas. And then you've got this amazing cost-effective way to put together framing that creates a safer environment for the framer. Because, Royal, I know you serve in the Army. I also serve in the Army. And just to be blunt, a framer's job is 10 times more dangerous than you and I ever had it overseas downrange fighting in gunfights, which blows my mind that you are 10 times more likely to die building a house in America than you are just simply going to war, which you and I signed up for like idiots. These people are just trying to put food on the table, which is a huge deal. They should not be 10 times more likely to die than you and I actually taking fire. So for me, it's a big movement forward to actually enable the future workforce. As you said it best, our population is expanding rapidly. The number of workers willing to build for that population is actually waning greatly. Which should really scare a lot of us in the construction industry. So we're just here to basically improve things through technology. So that's a little bit on the company itself.
Well, awesome. That was a very quick notes of the company. The statistic you brought up there, that the 10 times difference is not a statistic I was aware of, but also doesn't surprise me. I was a framer and I worked in construction, worked my way up to being a home builder, basically managing projects for this custom home builder before I went back to school for engineering. And it's not, being a framer, you're walking trusses in a 2-story house with a high pitched roof. You're 50 plus feet off the ground. And a lot of times you don't have anything to tether off of properly. Or, you see the old guys that have been doing it forever and walk up there like cats on with boots with no tread. And, it's dangerous. I've fallen off a fair number of roofs. I've had ladders collapse. Luckily, no serious injuries. But yeah, absolutely, definitely a dangerous thing. So let's rewind back because, we got to meet at the conference there in Salt Lake City a few months back. And we got some good chatting about really your history. And you actually used to be based not far from where I live over out of Niceville. And so I'd love to kind of hear what a little bit of your upbringing and how you wound up in BotBuilt.
Yeah, basically, it's kind of an interesting winding road to BotBuilt. So I was raised in an interesting household. I have a very interesting grandfather, World War II vet. And when I was a little kid, I was very into computers. My father is a gastroenterologist. My mother is an ad executive. And so just kind of growing up in this very privileged household, basically, my grandfather being an ag sciences guy, a farmer, saw that I started working on computers when I was about 3 or 4, and he's like, "No, screw that noise. You're going out to the ranch to learn what a man does." And it's different time, different place, and that's what he did. So we went out to Texas, and it was there that he explained homelessness to me for the first time ever. I learned what a homeless encampment was in El Paso, Texas. I remember this clearly. That's going to come in handy down the line as far as the story goes. So I grew up there. By the time I was like 11, 12, got to play in some bands, basically, a musicians group put together by a friend of mine from Little League, who was honestly the world's best drummer, quite frankly. So I was very blessed to spend most of my teenage years and my early 20s just basically touring around, playing music, having a great time doing that. But by the time I was really kind of getting bored with that lifestyle, it was just kind of a grind, a lot of effort. I got offered a job to be a financial advisor after kvetching about my financial advisor's lack of, I guess, growth in my own portfolio. And so I started working at Merrill Lynch. About 6 weeks in, the guy that was mentoring me there, the manager, just came over and was like, "Hey, realize they take a huge haircut from us here, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." It's like, "Want to start our own company?" And so I'm too young and dumb to know any difference. I was like, "Sure, let's go do that." Started up an RIA. We started up a SaaS company that was like an easily duplicatable, systematizable processes, web-based CRM. Before we could say the cloud, we had to say it was web-based. We had to explain to people what that meant and hosting all the servers and such. Enjoyed all of that, had a great time doing that and building those companies, learned a lot about people, learned a lot about sales. And then by the time I was, I guess, late 20s, it just kind of came to it where we were doing very well as a family, very successful. I had a wife, 2 daughters. They're starting to grow up a little bit. And so my wife was like, "Hey, you said when the tower fell that you can go join the army. Let's go have an adventure now. Take a little pause from your corporate world, take a break. You're burned out. Let's go do it." So we did it. We joined special operations, had a great career in the army for about a decade. Loved it. Like absolutely treat of the lifetime. Loved it. Got to deploy with some amazing people. One of my first operational gigs was the 7th Special Forces Group down there, and they moved us down to Eglin Air Force Base area. So we got to live out in the Niceville part of the Panhandle. It was beautiful. My wife still, I think, kind of hates me for moving us away from that. But
just so everybody understands, like we're full. It's horrible down here. There's gators everywhere.
yes,
It's swampy. Hurricanes every year.
Fighting flies are nasty, and
Don't come.
Which is way overhyped. I mean, it's twice in clear water. Like it gets old. You know what I mean? It just gets old. Obviously, it gets old. Yeah. Constantly nice
weather. Clear blue water. 80 degrees on the beach 6 months out.
It looks unnatural. That's how clean and nice it is. It looks unnatural. Yeah. So we lived there for a bit. Then I took kind of the dream job, basically, moved back up to Fort Bragg, which is now Fort Liberty in North Carolina. So we've been living out in Pinehurst since then. Unfortunately, I've been called the world's worst living parachutist. So I had a couple of blasts and downrange, and I guess a couple of parachute crashes, which broke some parts of my neck, broke some parts of my back, and required some surgeries. Developed epilepsy, which just you guys know in the Army is like a no-go zone. So the minute you have epilepsy, they're just like, "You're out of uniform, go."
Yeah.
So got out of uniform, did consulting work, still at Fort Bragg for a while. And while I was there, my cousin's husband, Barrett, who has always pitched me these amazing robot ideas, came to me with an idea to lure me back into the private sector that I felt very strongly about. We had invested greatly in real estate. I very, very frustrated by the build process, very frustrated by the time it took, just everything was siloed. Every GC had like 7,000 excuses per task that failed. And when he came to me with a way to automate things in a way that was meaningful, not just a huge German automation line that takes up, 1,500 linear run with 35 people, he came up with a way to truly make it automated and use materials that I feel are much more cost efficient, like stud grade lumber rather than perfectly straight lumber or light gauge steel. I was all in. So it was just a matter of putting together the business plan and going from there. So it was quite the jump, kind of going DoD back over to our side of the fence here in the private sector. But it's something that I'm extremely passionate about, primarily because upon learning about homelessness as a toddler, my heart broke. There's no way to explain it other than like something in me just twisted. And to explain this properly, my grandfather done very well. He ran like an agricultural business that did like international business with wheat. Amazingly wealthy man to me. He had 2 refrigerators. He had the garage fridge and the inside fridge, which back then was like baller, right? So yeah, so that's a big deal, big freaking deal. I'm wearing his Cadillac and it's brown on brown, so he had money. And so when I'm thinking like how rich he is, how rich am I that like this is my life and these people can't afford more than a lean-to by a freeway. That was unsatisfactory to me at wholesale. But I also know, obviously, a big thing in special forces line of the special operations world, they have a quote, de oppresso libera, to free the oppressed. And when you see communistic style or socialistic governments take over things, it never ends well for the people to have freedom and liberty. So I don't want some government program to just come in and give everyone the same looking style house and we all have to suffer and live in that type of lack of freedom. I'd rather use supply side economics and bring down the cost of housing through intelligence. And that's what computers and robots are enabling us to do, is bring down that cost, bring down the health and safety factors of building, and hopefully build up the supply enough so that everyone that should have a home can have a home and live properly with the American dream and create generational wealth for themselves and others.
That's really awesome that childhood experience has really driven you to this career and this innovation. Something similar, but I was actually homeless as a child, and I realized that was something that, I never wanted. We, food stamps, Section 8. We lived out of cars for, I think, about 2.5 years of my childhood before the age of 12. And I kind of got both sides of the aisle, because when I was about 12 years old, my mom just disappeared. That's the easiest way to put it. She just disappeared. And my dad, who I barely knew, took me in, and I got to basically experience his side of the family. And my grandfather, who had kept in contact with me when I was a child, also a structural engineer, also passionate about homes, started an engineering firm, had a real estate investment company, had a property management company, helped found a bank, had patents. I mean, did well for himself. And I just looked at it and went, okay, what are those people doing that result in being homeless, having to be on food stamps, having to be on Section 8? And what are these people doing that aren't? Because, I'm looking at my aunts and uncles and on my dad's side and going, they're doing pretty well for themselves. So what's the differences here? And then I also had an amazing mentor. One of the things when I was younger is my dad wasn't around. And so my mom actually signed me up for the Big Brother, Big Sister program, which is an absolutely amazing, amazing mentorship program. I'm 42. I literally just turned 42 2 weeks ago. I've had the same big brother for 32 years now, and we still talk once a week, once every other week. I still go and see him. He still comes and sees me. That's the change in life that these programs bring. So with PLIRIS, very similarly, is we're doing things to try and find ways to bring down the cost of a home, make more homes more cost effective, make things work better for people in so many different ways, by us streamlining the plan development process. And then in turn, because we are efficient, because we do these things, we're always seeking out ways to donate plans, because we can do it so efficiently. We have 100% remote staff. I don't have the overhead of an office building, right? I've got a massive library of plans that are available to me that we just pick from. We've got these innovations and systems in place, make it huge for us. In that aspect, what you're doing, trying to bring the cost of homes down, cost of construction down, exactly what we're trying to do here is innovate, streamline it, get us from start to finish as simply and as quickly and as cost effective as possible, because time is money, except for time is more than money, because you don't get it back, right? You can't ever earn it back. So these are huge things. So
by the way, just thank you for sharing that, because it says so much about who you are. I know this is a building podcast, not a psychology podcast, but right. If you'll indulge me for a minute, I will take the worker over the thinker any day. And what I found is people that have been hit in the face, whether metaphorically or physically. So I was taught to fight as a kid because I got hit in the face a lot. Yeah. Elon Musk has a great quote about this. You change once you've had your face punched. It just changes your whole outlook on life. And if you've never had that happen, you don't understand that fully. You had metaphorically your face punched, I'm guessing physically on occasion too.
Yeah, physically multiple times too, yes.
Exactly. So it changes your mindset to where now you're a fighter. Not that you're a brute or not that you're going to be some thug. Just that you understand what it is to get back up, spit out some teeth, and present yourself as ready to go again. That's a tenacity that just can be lacking in people that don't have some form of adversity come upon them early on or don't learn how to get over that. And Big Brothers Big Sisters, by the way, is a great example of not only showing you how to overcome it, but what that looks like in modeling. Because we as humans require that so much to see, like, oh, this is outside of my paradigm. This is who I could be. This is achievable to me. And it just changes the entire world. And that's what we want to do with homelessness. I found that if you take a homeless person and you put them in a home, they cease to be home. And that's not just a physical location. That is literally a mindset that allows them to have stability, that allows them to have some form of freedom, some form of autonomy. And that liberty can take you to a higher plane of thinking rather than just thinking about that next meal or that next survival moment, which basically just brings you down to a baser level, which is hard to live in over time, which is tragedy in its own right.
Exactly. If you solve the homelessness, if you can provide a stable roof over the head, or a safe roof over the head is a better option, because we've got a lot of homes that are still in bad neighborhoods, and that's unfortunately why those neighborhoods continue to stay bad. Is the crime, the drugs, the other stuff continues to reside there. That's what these kids are exposed to. That's the life that they learn. There's a small percentage that get out of that, but it is exactly that. It's a small percentage, and you can go back all the way back to the 1950s and in LA and other major metropolises, and the areas of the city that were bad in the 1950s and 60s are still bad today because they can't eradicate the root problem in there. That's where Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and other mentoring programs are huge. The other thing is getting people to a safe home, and not just a safe home, but a home that, homes are expensive to maintain, right? I live in a pretty decent sized house. If my HVAC equipment goes out, that's $15,000-$20,000, right?
Easy. Yep.
Somebody that's struggling to even own a home doesn't have $15,000 to $20,000 sitting around to pay for that maintenance, right? So by providing in the most part, a newer home with quality appliances, quality equipment that they can, and also educating them in the financial side of it, which I thought is awesome that you came from a finance background as well. Because financial education was one of the biggest things that I got from going from one side of the aisle to the other as a child, and understanding like, hey, you got to have a savings. Just because you made that money doesn't mean that money is, just because it looks like you got money in the bank, you don't have money in the bank, right? Something is going to come about. And, it's always scary to me when I hear these statistics about, 60+% of the population couldn't tolerate having $1,000 emergency expense, which is astounding. And,
it is.
And then in conjunction with that, where the median price of the homes have become so unaffordable, how do we help with that? And that's where this innovation is really helpful in trying to get with it. And like you said, the government fix isn't a fix.
No.
We see those fixes in socialist and communist governments all the time. Oh, come here, we'll help you. Come here. Well, we'll help you, but you literally have no freedoms whatsoever, no abilities whatsoever. We're giving you this cookie cutter thing, and you're just going to be happy about it. And that's, that's not a fix. In conjunction with that, we always strive the Veterans Housing Project. We offer our plans, no charge to them. We've reached out to Gary Sinise Foundation. We offer our stuff, no charge to them. And really, to any builder listening to this, if you have a build that you're doing as a not-for-profit build for a veteran to get them out, get them into a home, we will provide full permittable plans at no charge, period. So, that's what we provide. So, you guys obviously, can't build an entire home for free, but you've significantly cut down the expense by really streamlining the operation. So let's talk about because you said, you've taken this from a massive production line, which I've been in the pre-manufactured home production lines. They're huge. They're 4 football fields and then some stacked together in order to produce basically a modular section that fits onto the truck bed. And they produce a couple of those a day. And it's a lot of facility. It's a lot of energy to do that. Granted, it's more streamlined and system controlled than in the field. But let's talk about your guys' system. You're not building a full pre-manufactured system. You're building a panelized system. So let's, hit on what those differences are. And
that's a good place to start, is with the glossary of terms. So so we're building just the framing package right now. Now, eventually, we're going to improve the technology to put in more of what your MEP would be and the insulation packages and such. But right now, what we want to start with is kind of what's the long pole in the tent with building a house. That's framing. It's 40% of your materials and labor time goes into that first little aspect, and it sets up every other trade for either abject disaster or perfect success, but it rarely lines up anywhere in between. You have these little hiccups that cause your plumber to be 3 weeks out, and then your electrician to be 4 weeks out, and then the permitting has to come back to make sure that you actually pass in this time. It's a mess. And so for us, just addressing framing was big. But the other part of it was just the automation aspect can't be something that is a worse solution from a cost perspective, because to me, yes, I do have a finance background. So if it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense. It's just the way I operate. And having a gigantic line that takes dozens of people to run, it could be more streamlined than at the job site. But as we're seeing time and time again, especially with a lot of these companies failing out, is that it doesn't pencil out at the end of the day. You can't actually have a productive line that makes money unless you think about streamlining a lot of those processes. And so by putting our little set in this, 30 by 30 space where you can stack these robots next to each other, just time and time again, we build on 2 robot arms. You see them on every automobile line in the world, right? Once they're out of about 0.2 millimeters of precision, that Sumter, South Carolina BMW plant no longer has a need for those ABB 210 kilo arms. They send those, that huge payload, over to us for pennies on the dollar. We get eBay. We fit them with our specialized tooling. We have tooling for sheathing and gripping and routing and all that, the process of framing. They can pick it up, and they're mapping their own charted path through motion planning. So rather than have a human hand jam each new panel, this is where Katera was losing hundreds of thousands of dollars per change. It was hand jamming that bot to move to specific points every time. It can build flexibly. So each new plan, let's say PLIRIS approves this, and then this, and then this, and then this. You can send us each new plan, and we're building out that plan without any change to line. We don't have to go reinstall robots. We don't have to readjust things where points are. They're recalibrating on their own. They're actually building out their plan and path. And that for us just creates not just a huge cost saving, but it also creates a space savings. So in that same line where you'd have one giant 600 to 1,500 foot line, you could have 20 of our lines running at the same time, meaning your speed greatly increases, which means productivity increases, which means cost actually can go down at scale, which is a huge part of just making sure it pencils out at the end of the day.
Wow. That was a lot of information.
Yeah.
So let me hit on a couple of things. So you're reusing these robot systems from other producers, other manufacturers where, like you said, they've gotten slightly out of calibration, which I understand. A decimal of a millimeter for a car manufacturer is nothing in the home production world. We're dealing in quarter, half, and full inches of tolerances where, using micrometers in their cases. So that's a huge reuse, not to mention, being able to recycle that, and you're getting it very cost effectively. They're not just trashing it or parting it out and, losing money on it. So that's a great reuse of it. You're multitasking these robots to essentially not just serve as this part of the line does the studs, this part of the line does the nailing, this part. You literally have a system of, this is where these panels are going to be built, and all of the equipment fits in this small square, and everything just gets produced out. You got this robot does this and this, and everything just recalibrates and calculates it in, which is a massive space saver. And then we have the time saver of, this can be going really 24/7 as long as you've got, as long as you got projects in the line and product going onto the assembly line, and this can be going 24/7.
That's it.
And rain or shine, because it doesn't matter. It's in a conditioned facility.
Exactly.
And
exactly right.
So for streamlining it, with some of our builders, right now we're in 15 states. And in some of those states, there very much is a build season, and where, it's just, like Oregon, Washington, crew builders. They basically got shut down for like 2 weeks because of the ice storm that they just recently had. That's not going to happen to you. And so that's really awesome. We do work with a couple of barn dominium builders, and with barn dominium builders, there's what's called ladder paneling. And a quick explanation of that is basically, we have the main poles that make the primary structure of these barn dominiums. That's where the trusses are set on and attached to. And then in between, we build they prefabricate these 4-foot wide framing panels that have studs at 16 or 24 inches on center going up. And one of those manufacturers is based in the Midwest. Guess what? It's cold and wet and stuff in the Midwest. You're not drilling into frozen ground. So those 3 months during the wintertime, 4 months during the wintertime, they literally just have a small crew in their warehouse just punching out these ladder panels. What's innovative with you guys is that's going 24/7 and everything is trucking out to wherever the production is needed. So, which is just awesome. And again, like you said, it's the framing, it's the sheathing. You guys will eventually get to a point of looking at the insulated systems. So what kind of, the insulated systems and maybe even the pre-running electrical or pre-boring for plumbing stuff, those kind of things, which is all of those things that can be added on. So I mean, standard wall systems, depending on where you're at, 2x4, 2x6, 16 inches on center from a structural standpoint, 24 inches on center for an energy standpoint. What is your guys' variability in those production systems?
We can do both now. We just built some new tooling systems to work with both 2x6, 2x8, and 2x4, depending on what you need. We have header and very there. So our system also looks at the most efficient way to build based on parameters that the builder gives us. Every house is a snowflake and every builder has their secret sauce, basically. Most of the time, surprise, builders come to us and they're like, hey, can you make this plan the most cost-efficient plan? So that's typically what we'll do is we'll just say, okay, for turning this plan into a panelized system, this is where your studs need to be, this is where everything needs to be. And we're working off stamped plans already. So the structural engineering portion is complete. We know that this home will work with this code base. We scrape in our own code base for the locality that we're working in just to make sure, because trust but verify is a golden rule in building. And then from there, it's just a matter of having the system build up and move forward. So it's not really a deficit in any given time based on the type of materials that we're working with. For the, what I call the good, better, best plan for building out the panel, that insulated system, and then that routed system, or perhaps even that system. We have the tools already for it. Right now, we're just working on perfecting the line out for scale for what we're doing. And then we'll start working here in our R&D facility in Durham, North Carolina, those next steps with the robots that we have running here, just test out whether or not, what's the most efficient path for all of that. And what's, obviously, MEP has so much variability right now. There's a lot of different new systems out there, and we want to make sure that we're meeting the market where it is, but also kind of skating to where the puck's going to be as well, and making sure that we're understanding what is needed there.
Gotcha. One of the things you talk about is the sheathing, and one of the things we're dealing with, or we're seeing a widespread inclusion of, is the continuous insulation, continuous exterior insulation. Does your guys' tooling system, you can go up to 2x8, have you guys looked at the tooling systems to use a continuous insulation system, whether there's multiple out there right now, or doing it where you are doing a standard sheathing and then adhering like a GP type continuous insulation to the exterior of that?
So without my lawyers yelling at me over patent stuff they're filing right now, I will say that we are working with several large partners who are in this space of insulation, and they have been very generous with their time and materials to test out different things. And we are well on our way to that system being a reality here in the factory, because that's where we see a lot of the future being, especially, you obviously see it at the EVE conference, right? But outside of that circle, even more people are going to rely on that, so that we're not replacing these $8,000 coils in an HVAC system every 5 years because it's getting burned out because the home is just evacing all that it has within it. So I think as people see the value set and the value proposition kind of flipping, the cost of materials and is becoming so high that initial cost of additional insulation, the new systems, both on the sheathing side and on the internal side that we're seeing, and just the way that you're packing studs properly, can make such a huge difference for the actual overall cost of that home to the homeowner over time, which again just goes into that understanding the economics of home ownership. There's a lot of ways to lose money while owning a house. And so by diminishing those factors and increasing the lifespan of the systems they're in, I think that you'll see that those continuous insulation systems will come a lot more into popularity, and what I would say even kind of more the mainstream over the next years, especially.
Well, and it's awesome to hear you're getting ahead of the curve, because like I talk with people, and this from finance. If you're complaining about something today, the time to fix it was 5 years ago, right? Yep. And that's where it's at. So we're seeing already, Washington is making a massive push of almost requiring continuous insulation. The builders that we met with when we were in Salt Lake City, their parent company is making a push to make all of their homes net zero, which net zero continuous insulation is a very efficient way to push towards that. And so the fact you guys are already working on that integration is really awesome. from a structural standpoint, what the biggest issue we've had is continuous insulation, especially the big manufacturers, is they have a very low structural capacity. And so what we wind up, and it's not that it's not there, it's the testing isn't there.
Yeah.
And so and unfortunately, because our testing protocols require years and years and massive models and everything to get enough data for them to look at this statistically and say, okay, this now actually does have much higher capacity, much higher stability. We can increase these systems. What we're going to unfortunately be on the back end curve of is, hey, we got this continuous insulation, but in areas of high seismic, high wind, or the majority of it is just, I mean, we have a lot of homes going in that just because of the low shear capacity, we're having to essentially sheathe it and then continuously insulate it. And that continuous insulation also has sheathing on it. So we're creating a very, very structurally sound home because we aren't
very, very expensive in the process.
Which, yeah, it makes it more expensive and then also, not as cost effective. And, we're having to essentially ignore the capacity of the system that actually has a lot more capacity than what we're getting. So,
yeah, well, in an effort to not be yelled at by other people's attorneys, I will at least say that you're on something. And going back to your original comments about AI and what it can be used for is data modeling. And I think we're going to see some breakthroughs over the next 12 to 16 months of new things coming out and being approved for those things. But that is, I will cap my number of times being yelled at by attorneys right there.
Okay, no more getting yelled at by attorneys. All right.
That'd be helpful.
Awesome. So where are you guys based out of, and where can you guys distribute to?
So right now we're based out of Durham, North Carolina. We've built down as far south as Bentonville, Arkansas for our first few homes there for some custom home builders out there. We are starting to build a little bit in the north as well in Virginia. I like for optimization of scale for each one of our factories to be about 250 miles, 400 miles from the build site at the longest, just to think about costs and think about efficiency of truck use, not just wasting money on diesel fuel basically in that process. But realistically, because our footprint is so light from a CapEx standpoint, we can take our robots and put them within any major metro and have that entire area covered with easy shipping with a truck doing 2 routes a day. The other benefit that we have is, having lived in states like Arizona, California, Florida, I understand the boom and bust market is real. Florida busts not so much lately, but I think the stat from 2023, by the way, your concerns are real. It's 1,000 people a day we're moving into Florida. So that's insanity when you think about that from a supply side economics point of view. So for us, the ability to say, okay, Phoenix is red hot right now, then it busts in another 5 years and there's just no building going on. We'll just pick those robots up and move them to Salt Lake or move them to Boulder or move them to LA, move them to where the market is picking up again, because we're not tied to this gigantic machine that costs $12 million to put on a truck. It is just as simple as just picking it up, shipping it elsewhere, putting them down, and moving forward. To the point where we're working on systems that will also eventually be just in the job site area. So think about a 5,000 home community that they're putting in. We just rather put our robots down on one of the pads and say, cool, start building to help augment that framing that's taking place because it is such a busy work site. And that diminishes the need basically for the logistics package altogether. But right now we're just in Durham. We have our 3rd facility coming online this quarter, which will be nice. And then we can start pumping out homes out of that. And from there, we'll just basically be moving to where you're seeing the hottest markets at. It's mainly the Sun Belt down in Florida and out west, obviously, where it's kind of the show right now from Texas and Arizona's perspective.
Right. We started serving Arizona, and first off, Arizona is one of the few states that now requires a full mechanical, electrical, and plumbing design for permitted for residential. It doesn't matter if it's an ADU or a 20,000 square foot mansion. All of that has to be pre-designed prior to submittal. And we're one of the few companies that we offer it all in-house. So we've really seen a massive growth in Arizona. And then, more and more states are pushing for this. Do I agree with it? A lot of the design and a lot of stuff that they're gathering for information, they aren't using effectively. So we're doing extra work for it to just basically be on a sheet of paper. So there's my rant about that.
But you're getting ahead of that now, just the same way that we're looking at these insulated products. Do I agree with government over-regulating the hell out of everything? Absolutely not. But at the end of the day, we have to play in the confines we're given. And I'd rather be prepared for those confines than just playing catch up again and wondering, why this one regulation killed off 40 of my, partners in the industry. It's unnecessary. And we can just think ahead and just get ahead of that curve.
Right. Yeah. And it is important. But we are seeing that growth in those markets. The Sun Belt is always huge and is a main area of investing and development. And so we're seeing a lot of that. And the 1,000 people per day moving into Florida, we're way up on the panhandle. We're not as affected by it. But with that said, I see us getting even more and more affected by it. There was just a massive investment into the expansion and innovation of the ports of Pensacola. And so, which Pensacola was one of the original main ports for the entire US. So it's a big one. It's been there for a while. So it's to see it getting this investment is going to be great. But then with that said, they just opened up the 3-mile bridge, which you probably drove over a few times living down here. It's now 6 lane. So it's 2 identical cable stay bridges next to each other, 3 lanes each, with an emergency lane and an overflow shoulder and walking bridge on both sides as well. It's massive.
And the growth has been, it seems, I remember going to Seaside, Florida in the 90s, and you could park on Ruskin. And to anyone that knows what that means, it's a big freaking deal. You can just park in the Modica Market and you're done, right? Now it's a giant zoo of people, basically, from all the stretch of the 98 and 38s, just human beings everywhere. It's insane. And they need houses. They need it done well.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the constant growth. And we're actually working with the developer that built out Seaside, where the Truman Show was filmed.
Yeah, yep.
We're doing almost the exact same thing outside of on the Washington coast, outside of Seattle. It's really cool to see that one come together. But
by the way, somewhere my wife just heard that and is now online looking at that development. So good on you. The ether. She's not even. Yeah.
You can just hear it. It's like
yep. You're gonna get a message later like, oh, we're looking at homes now. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, your social media, just all of a sudden the feed changes. Like, you've been looking at 38. You've been looking.
Yep, the algorithm just shifted, just like that.
Yeah, there you go. It's called Seabrook. It's beautiful.
Nice.
Yeah. It's out on the coastline of Seattle or outside of Seattle. Yeah, absolutely gorgeous. But that, anything you can do to reduce that, and not to mention, as we get building, especially in home construction sites, everything gets tighter. I've got, I personally have about a 50 home subdivision in the process that I own, and it's up on top of a mountain. Getting product up there and then having it sit up there, especially, as we hit on earlier with the homelessness, the transients, they steal stuff. I mean, that's the easiest way to put it. People just steal stuff. And so to have a situation where we can have limited product sitting in a very off environment also saves quite a bit. So, and like you expressed, I mean, I was a framer. Our typical 3,000 square foot home, from rock to sheathing, and when I say rock, from the foundation, from that rock to the sheathing on the roof, 4 to 5 weeks easily. And I mean, that's a full framing crew getting after it. And, that's working pretty efficiently well. And what we're seeing is like you expressed, is a massive decrease in the labor force. I was reading something the other day, and plumbers are rarer than diamonds at this point. So it's only getting worse. And as of the last census that was done on the amount of homes we need to address the population we have, not including what's going on our borders, 6.5 million home deficit. That's where we're at. We need 6.5 million more homes today to house the population that we have of Americans today. And we don't get there through additional government regulation and increasing costs. We get there through decreasing regulation and market innovation. So
yes, part of that is also increasing the labor force. And one of the things that we're doing is working with trade schools and saying, you don't just have to be a carpenter anymore. You can be a guy that works with robots, a person who comes to work every day and works on these gigantic mechatronic lines, but you're a carpenter, you're a plumber, you're an electrician. Because for us in our generation, I think in particular, we were kind of threatened with the trades. It's like that thing you do because you couldn't get into college, right? And so I did everything right. I went to my school and I did my little finance career, and I went to this very prestigious grad school and all that nonsense. And then I'm paying my plumber $375 an hour and thinking, am I the idiot? because I think I'm the idiot. And we
Yeah.
need to have more people see that the money's not only great in the trades, but you have that satisfaction of a job well done. It's so crucial to the human soul, in my opinion, anyway. And by hopefully increasing the number of people, especially the younger folks out there, that are interested in the trades, because it's not just the trades anymore, it's robotics, it's computer science, and it also happens to be plumbing, where you're going to make bank in your life, and it's going to be an awesome job for you. We're hoping to make that just a little bit cooler again and bring people back into that factor of wanting to see a job well done through the trades.
Yeah, and what people don't, hitting back on the trades, what people don't understand when you're going through to be an electrician, or you're going through to be a plumber, yes, they're working long days and then they're going to school afterwards. They're working long days and making six figures while going to school.
Bingo.
That's what people understand. It's not, hey, they're going to school and incurring a bunch of debt, not, they're getting paid. There's no unpaid internships as an electrician, as a plumber. And when I was in the trade, when I was a framer, I remember talking to some electricians who were about my same age, and they were working towards getting their signing supervisor certification. And a signing supervisor certification with some of these electrical companies, $250,000. That's their starting salary.
Right?
So here you have guys that have zero college debt, have been making six figures since they started the apprenticeship program, are now working towards getting a signing supervisor, which then also allows them to become their own. A journeyman electrician, you can be your own company, but signing supervisor, you can go after the big stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And $250,000 is essentially where your starting salary is. And you can get there in 7 years, 10 years. You can get there quicker than a doctor can get out of school with zero debt. And those people are needed, massively needed. I don't have a college fund for my kids. I have other investments for my kids.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if they go to college. And in fact, I will encourage them not to go to college, because unless you have a specific thing that you are passionate about, that requires you to have a degree, why?
Yeah.
Why?
That's just the simple truth. I think the joke among a lot of doctors is we went to medical school because we weren't smart enough to get into dental school, because they're the ones working 32 hours a week, making 300,000 a year, right? I think that same joke now applies to the trades, where one of my best friends who golfs out with me on occasion is my HVAC guy. And he's living a fine and dandy life, taking his monthly trips to Disney World with the kids, just, enjoying life. He's his own boss. He gets paid well into the upper six figures, doing just fine and dandy. Doesn't have any college debt. He can teach you how to cook the best squirrel stew you've ever had in your life. This good old country boy was hunting, fishing, and golf, right? He's living my retired man's dream.
Right.
Because he wants trades. Just that simple.
Yeah. Similar to that, when I lived in Oregon, I lived near a lake, and every big, fancy, crazy house that lined that lake and had the fancy ski boat, every single one of them was a plumber, electrician, HVAC guy, or general contractor. Every single one of them. There wasn't, that guy's a banker. Oh, that guy, did this. No, every single one of them came something from the construction trades. And it's like, here they are in their 40s. And for the most part, it's like, hey, I go to my job sites. I'm back home in the early afternoon. My kids get home from school. We jump on the ski boat and we go out. Like, that's their life.
That's a good,
pretty nice life to have, right?
That's a great life without all the pretension of corporate America and having to look snuffy at the country club. They're just enjoying life and smiling.
Yeah. I used to have a ton of respect for want to strive to be the guy in the business suit in the fancy car that drives into the office. And then I realized they work for a guy that's in his sweatpants sitting at home that drives a 15-year-old Honda Accord and comes into the office maybe 4 hours once a week. It's which one do you actually want to be, right? So
that's it, man.
So, well, awesome. Well, hey, sir, I really, really appreciate your time here. I love what you guys are doing, and I love your motto, construction revolutionized, because it's exactly what it is, and just absolutely amazing.
Appreciate that, and thank you for having me today. It's been a pleasure of conversation as well. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely great. And we got to find some more time to reminisce about just construction, trades, the fun things we did in the military, and
absolutely
all that stuff. So awesome. So this has been Royal Mortier with PLIRIS, and this is the Build Better Homes podcast. If you enjoyed this show and this content, we always appreciate you just subscribe and listen to more. And as always, go do great things.